Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking even more about this Nintendo Direct rumor we've been hearing about. Not the partner showcase that just happened, but a bigger Direct that Nintendo is going to be doing perhaps a few weeks from now, where they would be revealing the next 3D Mario and something from Monolith Soft. There have been different things that have been happening that are adding more fuel to this fire, more reason to believe that there might actually be something to this idea. And the more and more things that come up, and as we seem to get more and more clarity on how Nintendo is handling things this year, I'm kind of led to believe that what we're looking at here is going to be kind of like the big Direct we got last year. So if you remember last year, there was a big general Direct focused on Switch 1 at the end of March, but then just a few days later, not even a whole week later, they had the big Switch 2 Direct, which was an hour long on April 2nd. And I don't want to go so far as to say that this next Direct will also be an hour long, because they're not going to need to spend that much time on showcasing the console itself. They've already done that with that Direct. But I am starting to think that because we have been waiting so long for that big Direct that has the first party announcements, that what's going to happen here is that things aren't going to be divided in the way they have in prior years, but it's going to look a lot more like last year where they launched the Switch 2, where there were many different smaller types of presentations, but there was that one big Direct to outline what is to come throughout the year. We haven't gone that yet, but as more and more things come out, that is what I'm starting to believe. So what has happened most recently that is fueling this fire even more so? Well, that's what we're getting into today. Now before going forward, let me simply point out I have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers, so if you enjoy my videos, your subscription, if you haven't subscribed already, would be very much appreciated. So something interesting happened a few days ago. A lot of people were freaking out, and myself at first was also freaking out, that we might have seen a leak from Nintendo about Nintendo Wii coming to Nintendo Switch Online or Nintendo Classics. And the reason for that is because people were sharing these links to Nintendo's own support page where they would have pages like this. Nintendo Switch 2, Wii Remote. So if there's a Wii Remote for the Nintendo Switch 2, then that would lead you to believe, oh, then there must be a Wii app that's coming to Nintendo Switch Online or Nintendo Classics. And you might think that, but what we've actually learned is that there are some quirks to Nintendo's support page. Basically, with the right ID, you can put in information so you can get all sorts of different types of pages. Like here, everybody want to switch piracy? That doesn't make any sense, right? Or like here, Nintendo Switch Online, Wii Remote, like there's just different things that can be done. This is not even the same name as this. This is just a quirk of Nintendo's support page. This is not actually leaking anything. This is people messing around with stuff. However, this situation prompted an insider to say something really interesting. That insider, Special Nick of the Xbox Era podcast, who we've talked about before, has leaked various things regarding Nintendo, most recently Super Mario Galaxy 2 as part of the Mario 40th anniversary, the launch pricing bundles and release timing and pricing for the Nintendo Switch 2, and even the overall direction of Metroid Prime 4. These are things that have been said by Special Nick well before we actually knew about them officially, when very few, if no one else, were talking about these things. So Special Nick has shown to have some pretty good sources when it comes to Nintendo things. And this is what he said in regards to this recent event with this whole Nintendo support page stuff. Yeah, that's what I had been told, at least eventually. Not sure it's anytime soon. This is just a standard placeholder support page supposed to be the Nunchuck 2. So Special Nick here is just saying he has heard about Nintendo Wii coming to Nintendo Classics. However, as he explains more so here in this little screenshot, oh, for sure, you'd be right there. I was just saying more generally. They are doing DS with an extra screen and Wii with a new Wii Remote that doesn't need the sensor bar, and Sega CD. And then Necrofelipe here says, oh, this is something probably in the cards. Sega CD I've heard of alongside the Wii project. So two different people who would be privy to some level of inside information, especially Special Nick with his history of very accurate Nintendo leaks, has heard about Nintendo DS coming, Nintendo Wii coming, and Sega CD. So no, the support page stuff doesn't mean anything, but it just so happens that there are plans for this. Now, what's also interesting here, I was actually on a live stream with friend of the channel Nintendo Prime, where this news was just kind of getting out there, and Special Nick was messaging Nintendo Prime, and it was actually talked about how one of these is supposed to be happening soon, like before June. Which brings me to one of the new reasons to support this idea of a bigger direct. Because as I've talked about before, there's reason to be skeptical of this rumor, because typically when we get a partner showcase, it replaces what would have been a general direct for that period of the year. Throughout most of the Switch era, Nintendo was having big general directs 3 times a year. One in the early months, February or March usually, then in the summer, June or July, then in September. Now, most recently, that pattern has been thrown out of whack because Nintendo's been throwing out directs everywhere with the launch of the Switch 2, so I do think that gives us some room for optimism here. Still though, with this recent partner showcase, I have been concerned that we might have to wait until June before we get the next big influx of information from Nintendo. And so if what Special Nick here is hearing is true, then that means that one of these other platforms is about to get announced really soon. Now, he's not promising it's going to be Nintendo Wii that will be announced really soon, but either DS, Wii, or Sega CD, and I will point out there have been patents of Nintendo utilizing a second screen with the Switch 2, which might be about adding DS compatibility for Nintendo Classics. So it seems like Nintendo has some substantial plans to continue to improve upon Nintendo Classics here, and a big update may be coming before summertime, and this is interesting to me because I think it also supports the idea that this direct we're getting is not just going to be a direct to tell us about things to get us through the summer, but is going to be more so the bigger direct that kind of tells us everything we need to know about this year. Very much like that direct sandwich we got last year. And actually, there's even more. So, Jez Corden actually had said this back in December. The first Call of Duty Switch version is nearly done and launching in a few months. So, to me, this does not suggest that we have to wait all the way until, say, November for the next Call of Duty to come to Nintendo Switch 2. Reminder, Microsoft and Nintendo, Microsoft owning Activision, the maker of Call of Duty, they're in a legally binding agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo platforms, and that agreement was from a few years ago. We still haven't seen anything yet. Now, this conversation that happened back in December was about the fact that apparently the dev kits just weren't out yet, they weren't ready to start development in earnest. But here, it suggested that they are now developing in earnest and they're very close, and it should be launching in a few months. So to me, this basically suggests that we shouldn't be waiting all the way until the end of the year for it to be coming out, which I think adds more credence to the idea that there should be a direct soon where something like this would be announced. Now, what I also find interesting is that if Call of Duty were to be coming soon, you would think Nintendo would have announced it in a partner showcase. But as we talked about a couple days ago, we also thought Nintendo would talk about the Dust Bloods, because if the partner showcase was truly meant to be kind of like that bigger presentation to give us the announcements we need until the summertime, then you think they would have showcased their big third-party exclusive, yet they didn't. And what's even stranger is actually the lack of Elden Ring being there, because Elden Ring was supposed to come out last year, yet From Software had to delay this Switch 2 version to 2026. But if it was just delayed for some optimizations, how long would it have to be delayed? You wouldn't be led to think it would be delayed a whole year, right? So you would have thought this would have shown up in the partner showcase if it's coming out relatively soon, and it also was not. And something else I did not mention in my video from a few days ago is that there were these recent trademarks, including one for Splatoon Raiders, and some people are taking these trademarks to mean that something's going to be happening on February 17th. And let me just say, I would love for that to be the case, but I also think trademarks happen for not necessarily to reveal a game immediately, but more so to protect the branding. So while in some cases this may be a hint at plans for a particular series or IP, I don't think this part is necessarily evidence that a direct is happening on a Tuesday next week. But something else new about this situation has come up. Nash Weedle, the source for this rumor, who we've talked about has actually a pretty good track history, not everything right, but a lot of things he's continually getting right all throughout the last year or so, alongside Attack the Backlog, who has heard something's supposed to happen after the partner showcase, even though he hasn't clarified on what quite yet. Both of them are doing a podcast about this Nintendo Direct rumor, again, a second one, because apparently there have been updates and they have more to say about this and the 3D Mario project that's going to be there. So if they're continuing to talk about this, something that's kind of a big exciting thing that people will be let down if it is not turning out to be true, you'd think they'd be very cautious about it, but if they're continuing to talk about this to bring more information, I think that would actually be suggestive that they've heard more things behind the scenes that are giving them even more reason for optimism, more confidence about what they're hearing here. Now, in a couple of days, we'll probably talk about what they've heard, but things are seemingly coming together here. Now, if you did miss the conversation from a couple of days ago, I will also point out that while we do know about games all the way up until April, we don't know about May and beyond, so waiting until June, that wouldn't quite cut it. There are going to need to be some Nintendo announcements before that point, such as giving us a release date for Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, and likely also Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave and Splatoon Raiders. So those games will probably be in the Direct, and if this rumor is true, something for 3D Mario and an announcement from Monolith Soft. And we've already gotten this voice actor leak of Caitlin Thorburn working on something for Xenoblade Chronicles to come out in 2026, which we think most likely is pointing to a rumored enhancement for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which supports what Nashville heard about something coming from Monolith Soft in the next Direct, but also, this seems to also line up with a tease from Nintendo early in the year where he just put out Xenoblade, and most recently, we got confirmation that he was teasing something Digimon in the next partner showcase, and that was confirmed, adding more credence to some of these other teases he's been putting out there. And by the way, there have been some talks about a Zelda remake this year for the 40th anniversary. No, not the big Ocarina of Time remake, something smaller, where it's for the most part believed that if we are getting this Ocarina of Time remake, it would be for next year, if not later. Although I think next year is most likely the year. But Nintendo did tease a Zelda remake as well, and the conversations seemingly have been circulating around perhaps a remake of Oracle of Ages and Seasons. So what's kind of crazy here is it almost looks like we're in a position to get a Direct in perhaps in the next few weeks where we could be hearing about maybe a remake of some kind for a 2D top-down Zelda game, an enhancement for Xenoblade Chronicles, finally an announcement for the next 3D Mario to come out as a big release this year, and updates on Fire Emblem, the Dustblood, Splatoon Raiders, and Yoshi and Mysterious Book, but then also perhaps some sort of new platform coming to Nintendo Classics. Would it be Sega CD? Would it be Nintendo DS? Would it be Nintendo Wii, based off what Special Nick has heard? Let me know what you all think in the comments below, but more and more seems to be happening to support this idea that something is coming soon. Anyways everyone, this is AndresRestart, thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.